French pronouns can be difficult and a little overwhelming, especially since a lot of them are very similar. But by the end of this video, I hope they'll be at least a little easier to understand. First up are subject pronouns. These are pretty straightforward because, like the name says, they replace the subject of a sentence. This means that they can only replace the person or thing that is doing the action of the sentence. So for sentences like Nate plays guitar, or Mary was running this morning, or the dog is chasing a ball, for those sentences, Mary, Nate, and the dog would all be replaced by subject pronouns. Let's move on to direct object pronouns. These replace the thing or person who is receiving the action of the verb. This means that the action in the sentence is directly affecting this person or thing, hence the name direct object pronoun. Le, la, and les are special direct object pronouns, and they replace certain kinds of nouns. For example, they can replace nouns that are introduced by definite articles, which are also le, la, and les. They can also replace nouns introduced by possessive adjectives like mon, ma, me, ton, ta, te, etc. They can also replace nouns that are introduced by nothing, like proper nouns, the names of people, the names of companies, things like that. Le can also replace a complete clause. If the whole clause is the direct object of the sentence, you just replace the whole thing with le. Moving on to indirect object pronouns. As the name suggests, these replace nouns that receive the action of the verb indirectly. And the way to tell the difference between an indirect object and a direct object is usually easier if you first translate the French sentence into English. So here I've translated the French into English, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if the English "I'm bringing you some cookies" makes sense if I put in the word to or the word for. So I can say, "I'm bringing some cookies to you." I can also say, "I'm bringing some cookies for you." Since this makes sense grammatically, this means that this is an indirect object, and this means that when I translate it back into French, I'm going to replace you with an indirect object pronoun. If to or for didn't fit in the sentence, then it would be a direct object pronoun. On to disjunctive pronouns. Disjunctive pronouns are a little bit harder to understand for us native English speakers because we don't make a distinction between a disjunctive pronoun and a non-disjunctive pronoun in English. The most important thing to remember about disjunctive pronouns is that they can only replace people. If you have a thing, like an animal or a plant, it cannot be replaced by a disjunctive pronoun. They can only be people. And what's more, they can only replace people who are introduced by a pronoun that is not a. If you've studied French for any time longer than like 2 weeks, then you know that every French rule usually has at least a couple exceptions. Luckily for you, there are only 5 exceptions to the disjunctive pronouns rule. So here they are, 5 verbs that take the preposition a that still take disjunctive pronouns. Last but not least, we have the 2 most random and confusing pronouns of the French language. So let's start out with the pronoun e. E replaces places, and it also replaces things that are introduced by a, but it can only replace things, not people. If a person is introduced by a, then it's automatically an indirect object pronoun because a is to in English. E can also replace ideas and concepts, which is not talked about as much in introductory French, but it's something to remember. And finally, the pronoun en. This pronoun replaces nouns introduced by indefinite and partitive articles. It also replaces nouns that are not people introduced by de. Because remember, if a person is introduced by de, you're going to use a disjunctive pronoun. So there you have it, a quick crash course on French pronouns. Here are a couple of practice sentences to get you started, and on the next page are the answers. Thanks for watching.